2025 has finally come to a close, and I need a lot of catch up. 2025 has finally come to a close, and I have a lot of catching up to do. For whatever reason, I kind of got burnt out towards the end of the year. I think it was kind of due to the lack of new releases in general, the lack of quality new releases, as you'll see throughout this video. I just wasn't feeling inspired enough to talk about these things on a weekly basis. Now, I've gotten over that. I'm going to return to be doing my normal shtick as per usual, plus with the new podcast that's going to be debuting very soon. So we have all, way more outlets for me to talk about older films, to talk about stuff that isn't just new releases, but I want to get back to my bread and butter here. I want to deliver some thoughts on some of the major stuff that I did end up seeing, but didn't get a chance to review. So this is going to be a first part. I think I have around 12 movies in here, so it's going to be pretty rapid fire, and then I'll get the second part out, and then it'll be year-end list season before we know it. I know I'm already very late on that. I know it's a decent amount of the way through January already. But gonna get this out to you guys, going to get those top 10 lists hopefully out by the end of the month here. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Die, My Love, directed by Lynne Ramsay and starring Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson, was easily one of my favorite films of the year. It looked at a depression and not really midlife, but quarter-life crisis in a way that I really haven't seen before. It went to places that were incredibly uncomfortable, were incredibly awkward, but felt real and felt like a genuine portrayal of these kinds of feelings, and Jennifer Lawrence gives a tour de force performance here. I think her performance paired with Lynne Ramsay coming into her own as a director really made this a fully realized vision and was easily one of my favorites of the year. A strong 4.5 out of 5 for Die, My Love. One of the more understated films of the year, Netflix's Train Dreams, kind of came out of nowhere for me. I love the performances here. I think Joel Edgerton gives a great performance. I think William H. Macy steals the show here. I just love how quiet this film is. I love how reflective it is. I think it treats its subject matter with just the right amount of grace, but also just the right amount of subtle optimism, even though it's a pretty depressing subject matter. Really enjoyed my time with this one. Also some really great cinematography in here. Strong 4 out of 5. I feel like Osgood Perkins keeps getting the short end of the stick when he's brought up in horror film discussions, especially online. A lot of people seem to really hate his style, and I guess I can understand it not being your thing, understand not clicking well with his sensibilities, but calling him a hack, saying he's one of the worst working horror filmmakers, just doesn't make any sense to me when he's constantly putting out new ideas and ideas that I think he really capitalizes on. We saw it last year with Longlegs, and while I wasn't a huge fan of his film from earlier this year, The Monkey, I think Keeper is one of his strongest visions to date. It takes a pretty simple story and turns it on its head pretty quickly, and the horror here and the folklore and the environment that he's able to build was really strong. I really enjoyed my time with Keeper. Light 4 out of 5. Sorry Baby was a very exciting debut feature that had a lot of people talking this year. I think that it tackled the subject matter in a way that felt so personal, that felt so honest, that felt so just laying it all out there, and was very brave of the filmmaker to do. This was, I forget her name, but the main actress, she wrote and directed the film as well. And while I really enjoyed my time with Sorry Baby, I really think it was one of the more brutally honest films about the subject matter that we've seen in a really long time. The way that the filmmaker was able to take back her own story of abuse and tell it through her eyes, tell it how she experienced, was some of the most emotionally gripping filmmaking I've seen all year. I do think the film is a little amateurish at times. Some of the editing, some of the creative decisions were a little too out of focus, if that makes sense. I felt like they weren't fully realized and could have used a comb over once or twice, but other than that, I think Sorry Baby is one of the strongest debuts to have come out this year. Really strong 3.5 out of 5 for me. Chloe Zhao really continues to bore me with Hamnet here. I think the performances are great. I do really like Chloe Zhao's visual style. I think that that's probably the most potent aspect of her repertoire, but man, I can't connect with any of her stories. I think that they are so trite and so surface level and don't ever go beyond what's being presented to you on the screen. And while, what's being presented to you on the screen is quite beautiful, you don't take away anything from it just because it's so, I don't know, it's such a non sequitur. I wanted to latch on to Hamnet. I wanted it to be this really sweeping emotional epic that showed a side of Shakespeare's history that we haven't seen before. And honestly, all we got was a pretty by the numbers dramatic period piece. So I was left feeling pretty underwhelmed by Hamnet. A light 3 out of 5 is probably the best I can do for it. Molly Gordon has always been somebody that I'm going to check out whatever project she puts out. I really loved Theater Camp, the movie that she co-directed with somebody else 2 years ago, I think. That was one of my favorites, honestly one of my favorite comedies of the entire decade. And here she kills it once again. I think she has a lot of great chemistry with Dylan O'Brien. I think this was a very unconventional rom-com. I really felt the sweetness. I felt the strife between the couple. I just bought a lot of what we were being presented here, and it ended up tying up very nicely at the end. So a light 3.5 out of 5 for Oh Hi. We all know my feelings about Luca Guadagnino at this point. I think he is one of our most visionary filmmakers working currently. You know, we have Challengers, Bones and All, Call Me By Your Name, the Suspiria remake, all of these movies that I've really connected to in the past. And then we get to After the Hunt, and while I don't want to get into a big, deep discussion about it here, just because I really don't have time for that, there's a lot we really need to break down about this film, about why it doesn't work, but I think it comes down to 3 major elements. One, Luca Guadagnino was not the filmmaker for this kind of story. I don't think his overly dramatic, kind of sillier side of himself comes out way too much in this film when it should have been taken a lot more seriously. The subject matter was handled in a way that kind of came off as distasteful in certain points. I did not love the performances here. Also, I think Julia Roberts was good. I definitely liked her character, but I don't know if I loved her performance in particular. Andrew Garfield is kind of just there and playing a character you would expect Andrew Garfield to play, and Ayo Edebiri is just not given enough attention. She should have been the protagonist of this film. I don't understand really why it wasn't told through her eyes, but yeah, I just think that this was a subject matter that Luca Guadagnino couldn't really handle all that well, and the movie is a tonal mess. So it's not terrible. I do think there are elements of it that do work. I don't think it's like morally abhorrent like some people are trying to claim it to be, but I just think it was a huge swing and a miss. 2 out of 5 for After the Hunt. I was pretty shocked when I saw the amount of love that this film Eternity was getting, because I left the theater feeling very underwhelmed and felt like it was a pretty by-the-books afterlife film. So we've gotten a gluttony of these kinds of movies ever since The Good Place kind of popularized this genre, and I didn't feel that this movie brought anything new to the table. Miles Teller was great, Elizabeth Olsen was really good, I liked their chemistry together, the other guy I didn't really love. But yeah, I got pretty much nothing out of this film. I felt like it took a very millennial approach to filmmaking, I guess. It has that like satirical pointing and winking at older people, but in a way that just feels cliche itself. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, I walked away from this movie feeling pretty unmoved. 2.5 out of 5. Kathryn Bigelow, you're a lot better than this. I don't know what the hell this propaganda bullshit is. This film was a mess right from the get-go. I even said in my Letterboxd review it came dangerously close to being as bad. Ice Cube's War of the Worlds, and I still stand by that. House of Dynamite was atrocious. 1 out of 5. Speaking of atrocious, we have what might be the worst new release I saw all of last year. That's right, it's Tron Ares. This is one of the most soulless, commercial, made-to-be-a-product films I have seen in quite some time. It really embodied everything that I hated about 2025 as a new release year for movies in general. I just found it to be so devoid of any humanness about it at all. I felt like there was no creativity, there was no vision, there was nothing to latch onto here. And then just to add a little sprinkle of insult, it has Jared Leto at the center of the film, and he is a void, as he normally is. So 0.5 out of 5. Blow this one out of the water, send it to the sun, I don't give a fuck. Fuck Tron Ares, I hate this movie. Probably going to be pretty high up on my worst of 2025 list. Every year there are a couple of movies that for whatever reason they're not released around theaters around me. I can't get to their limited release, and I kick myself because I think I'm going to love them, and If I Had Legs I'd Kick You was one of those movies. It's the reason why these kinds of things get delayed. It's the reason why I don't really release my year-end lists on time like everybody else does. And it's because I need to see films like this, and I was right. I was absolutely right. If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is a very, very strong film with a amazing central lead performance from Rose. I always forget how to say her name. Is it Brinth or Brythe? I think it's Brinth. I'm totally mispronouncing that incorrectly. I'm very sorry, but she is a tour de force in this film. I already said that about Jennifer Lawrence in Die My Love, but her performance is on the exact same level. I felt every emotion that she was going through in this movie. You feel sympathetic for her, you feel angry towards her, and then you feel understanding towards the end. She just is playing such a real human being and such a fully realized person that I cannot commend her performance enough. And the rest of the movie is also very strong. It has a very clear directorial vision. I think that its visual style is very distinct and stands out amongst the crowd, and could have, what could have easily faded into the background because of how character heavy this film is. The director, I forget her name as well, she, I don't know, she brought an extra level of oomph to the visuals that maybe necessarily wasn't needed, but was definitely incredibly appreciated. A$AP Rocky is really good in this movie. I think Christian Slater plays the husband, and that was he's always fun to have in a film. So this movie was just firing on all cylinders, and in the middle of that, told a very important story about mental health and the weight that our modern society puts on figuring your shit out, and the amount of ways that you can just kind of get crushed under trying to balance it all. So really loved If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. Strong 4 out of 5 for me. We're going to be talking about both Safdie brothers films this year. First is going to be The Smashing Machine. This was a movie that I had lower expectations for, I think, than most people. I don't know, I just felt like it might have been the Iron Claw Part 2. Like, that movie obviously got incredibly popular. I was expecting some sort of clone of that with the only goal in mind being to get The Rock an Oscar. And while that kind of is what we got, I think The Smashing Machine is definitely more interesting than that. I love how the film moves to literal jazz. The soundtrack really helps chug the pace along. I think The Rock and Emily Blunt are both excellent together, and I think that's a little bit more of an underrated aspect of the movie. Like, obviously The Rock is great, and I think that he should be recognized for this performance, but he wouldn't be who he ends up being in the film without Emily Blunt. So I think they both work off very well together. Benny Safdie for sure has his own visual language and directorial style that comes out here. I don't think it's fully realized, and I think the issues with this movie really come in the repetitiveness of the storytelling and the editing, but overall I felt like it was a very strong start to what is hopefully a very interesting solo career for Benny Safdie. I'm going to give it a strong 3.5 out of 5. Marty Supreme is up next, and obviously this is Josh Safdie's big solo venture, and it's as great as people are saying it is. The online discourse is bullshit. I think people really are coming out of the woodwork and telling you how stupid they are when they talk about this movie, just completely missing the point. However, I really love Safdie's style of filmmaking. I think his stories, particularly about people who dedicate themselves to a goal that seems nonsensical to everyone else around them, but the way they plunge themselves into that goal and ruin the lives of not only themselves, but everyone else around them. It's a very interesting way to look at pride, to look at pushing yourself too far, being selfish, yada, yada, yada. All that good stuff is all packed in here, and I think it's fully realized. It's a vision that he's been working on since Good Time, and I think that it's come to a head here with Marty Supreme. Obviously, I loved Timothy Chalamet. Odessa, do not know how to pronounce her last name, so I'm not even gonna try. She was fantastic in the film as well. And yeah, I just think this is kind of what the movies are made for. I don't think it's the best film of this year. I don't think that, it's an absolute top to bottom masterpiece. However, I do think it is something incredibly special, and is Josh Safdie fully realizing a movie that it seems like he's been wanting to make his entire career. And I had an absolute blast with it. I'm going to give Marty Supreme a light 4.5 out of 5. Our final movie we're going to talk about in part 1 is one that I just watched last night, and that is The Threesome. This is a rom-com dramedy that I had actually heard quite a bit about. I wrote it off as just maybe like another dumb sex comedy, but it actually wasn't. It was very thoughtful with its approach. It very honestly reminds me a lot of Juno and that kind of style. And one thing I do have to say, I loved Zoe Dutch and Ruby Cruz in this film. I think they are exceptional in this movie. Zoe Deutsch? Is it Deutsch or Dutch? I can't ever. I think it's Dutch. Sorry. This whole video is just me mispronouncing other people's names, but you know who I'm talking about. Zoe Deutsch, whatever, gives an incredible performance here, and I've always thought that she could handle being the lead vessel in a movie. I saw it in I'm Not Okay, where that movie would have crumbled without her. I even liked her in the small part she had in Zombieland 2. So I've known for a while how talented she is, and here she really gets to show it off and then some. And then with Ruby Cruz, I remember seeing her in Bottoms a while back and liking her in that movie a lot, but here she really is given room to lose herself in a role, and I adored her performance. The only thing I did not love about the film is the other lead actor, who I am looking up his name as we speak. I'm sorry that this is very unprofessional. Jonah Hauer-King, I thought was awful in the movie. I think he is a blank slate and a wet blanket in certain circumstances. He brings too much emotion to certain sequences and not enough to others. I think his character didn't do him any justice either. I found his character to be incredibly unlikable and not fit for this kind of very adult, very real situation. He was kind of acting like a teenager, and that just didn't fit the vibe with what Ruby Cruz and Zoe Deutsch were doing. So, I don't know, I felt that he was very out of place in this movie. I did not like his presence whatsoever. It really bogged down the quality. But outside of him, like, it's a well-constructed dramedy. It's a bit more on the generic side, especially towards the end, but it's got two really strong lead central performances, and it's very watchable. So I would definitely recommend The Threesome, and I'm going to give it a strong 3 out of 5. So that is my first part of my 2025 roundup. The second part should be up within the next couple of days. I got some movies to watch. I still have to watch It Was Just an Accident, Sarat, Sentimental Value, and there might be, No Other Choice. I need to go see that in theaters. So, you know, still have a couple things to get to, still have a couple things to tell you guys my thoughts on, and then we'll get right into year-end list season. Thank you guys so much for being patient. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking up and watching that Blu-ray video. That took me a while to get out there, and you know, just see all that positive feedback from there. I really appreciate it. So other than that, let me know what you thought of these movies in the comments down below. What were some of your favorites or least favorites in 2025? And I will see you with the next video. Thank you guys so much.